Lame duck New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio has done the triple Lindy of flip-flops, promising to flood the zone on Times Square with the same police he spent the last year denigrating, cutting their budget, and all the rest. This after a random shooting. Hey, everybody, I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, and this is Right Angle, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. Gentlemen, I'm just going to read you from Victoria Taft's write-up at PJ Media, because this just sets it up perfectly. On Sunday, a U.S. Marine visiting New York City was shot in the back in broad daylight while walking with his family outside of the Marriott Hotel in Times Square. This used to be some of the best real estate in all of New York. The Marine, Samuel Pullen, was touring the city with his family when a stray bullet ricocheted and hit him. He's expected to make a full recovery, but the possibility that a Marine faces more danger on a U.S. street than in combat isn't lost on anybody, certainly not on de Blasio for once. This part really gets me. The bullet came from a group of CD peddlers. So apparently in de Blasio's New York City, the place is so out of control that CD peddlers are now fighting over turf. This is nuts. This is not the Times Square. Well, this is the Times Square I knew in 1982, the first time I visited New York. But it's not the Times Square I knew the last time I visited New York, when Rudy Giuliani had cleaned up the place and Bloomberg kept it going. Bill, this comes on the heels of de Blasio's decision to flood the zone of the MTA after criminals were taking over the subways. New York City didn't used to have this kind of problem, but now it appears that the city's crime problem is the equivalent of playing whack-a-mole.
It's an utter mystery, Steve. No one can understand what could possibly be causing this. If you reduce or eliminate police force, demoralize them, make sure that they can't take any action whatsoever, and furthermore, if you make it crystal clear that you will not only not arrest lawbreakers, but actually celebrate them in your next press conference, then this rising crime tide, tsunami of evil doing in New York is just inexplicable. No one can figure out the source of it. And if you ask them, they will tell you that. I was in New York in 1979, a little bit before you, and my father was a hotel manager there. His last hotel he managed was Taft. And he basically told me when I was there, he said, you can go to this street, do not go beyond that street, especially at nighttime. And I remember coming back from Times Square, and I remember being followed, and I remember people handed out, live sex show things to, I was 20, and they were handing them out to kids. Yeah, it was a pit. And I didn't recognize it when I went back after 2007, 8, something like that. And I just simply could not recognize the place. It was like Disneyland, it was like, or it was like Waterfront or some new incredibly nice mall, and it's all real well lit and everything. So there's all the data on the table. New York was consistently the number one murder capital in America until Rudy Giuliani took over. He and Bill Braxton decided if we get tough on crime, we may actually see a reduction in it. And this novel idea of theirs, this broken window idea, it worked. For those of you not familiar with it, but what they basically said was, look, if you go into a neighborhood and the windows are broken on every building's got smashed windows, that is a sign that says there is no law here. And since there's no law here, do whatever you want to. When you start enforcing things like people throwing rocks and people, urinating against the side of the building, then it becomes clear that there is, in fact, a civilization here, and you just simply can't do whatever you want to. Work like a charm. A miracle. Absolute miracle. New York wasn't even in the top 20 murder capitals when I did number one with the bullet a few years ago. And now, of course, it's heading back. And so we come back to the same thing again and again and again and again, Steve. Once you have so much prosperity, so much security for so long, people tend to assume that that is the default condition of mankind. That's why they want their socialism. That's why they want to have police forces defunded and have them replaced with touchy-feely guys with, teddy bears and doing social counseling and all the rest of it. And the only way to cure people of this is to give it to them. And I say, okay, here you go. It cannot be lost on everybody. Even the most blue New Yorkers understand that this whole thing their whole political theory is insane. Evan said it wasn't said. They're not just wrong. They're wrong 100% of the time. that you can't be that wrong by accident, and that's really true. You have a philosophy that is predicated on the active denial of reality, and reality is going to win. So as long as people like de Blasio and Bernie Sanders are on the sidelines talking about how wonderful socialism is and defunding the police, then people, oh, sounds like a great idea. And then you actually do these things and you realize it's not a great idea. So when the murder rate gets high enough, long enough, sooner or later, the people in New York will elect a Republican. He'll fix things. It'll run beautifully for 10 years. People will assume that this is now the default state of New York City, and then they'll elect somebody who makes them feel good because he's talking about injustice and all the rest of this stuff. And the giant wheel of history turns again. But there are some of us who are capable of reading and reason, and we're not afflicted by these kind of fantasies.
Yeah.
As a general rule.
Bill just reminded me of the opening of The Incredibles, the original Pixar movie, not the sequel, where Mr. Incredible is being interviewed for some documentary, and he's getting a little frustrated. He's like, sometimes a little sick of saving the world. Why can't it just stay safe for just a little while? And here we are in the real world, worse than a Pixar joke. All right, Scott, you brought up something during the backstage, which is available to our paying subscribers, our supporters. We heard all those stories about sending in social workers instead of police. Why aren't they flooding the zone in Times Square?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. If police are not the answer, then why does somebody who had advocated that position immediately see police as the answer when he's got actual trouble and not just hypothetical trouble where he's engaged in public debate and virtue signaling about what he purports to believe in? There's so many issues surrounding this story that are fascinating to me. I mean, you think of the wife and kids praying for the safe return from deployment of their Marine husband and father, and he gets back to home and now he's in danger. Now he's getting shot. To show you how far New York City has declined since its heyday when the crime was reduced and stuff like that, just the nadir of its sociological development right now is highlighted in that phrase, they were selling CDs on the street. Who the heck is buying CDs? What does this country come to? What does this city come to when people are actually reduced to buying CDs on the street? I was in New York City a number of years ago, and I forget exactly which year it was, but it was the year that they had the Republican National Convention at Madison Square Garden. And at the time, I wasn't there for the convention. I had actually driven to Connecticut with my family. I was preaching at a church in Connecticut. And on the way back, I wanted to pass through New York City because even though I grew up about an hour and a half away from New York, I'd only been there like once or twice in my life. And so I thought, wouldn't it be great? We can stop in New York and just kind of see what's there, like go to the Empire State Building or something, which we did. And when I got there, it was nighttime. And so it's dark. And I'm thinking naturally, country boy in the city, danger. But as it turns out, the sidewalks in the area where we were absolutely lined shoulder to shoulder by police with riot shields and batons and heavy weaponry. Wow. And, AR-15 style semi-automatic weapons and stuff like that. I have never felt safer in my entire life, with the possible exception of when I was in Jerusalem. When I was in Jerusalem, I felt even safer, especially when I was actually in like the Arab quarter of Jerusalem. I just felt like there was this envelope, perhaps like an iron dome of safety around me. And so, your cities can be that way. You can have a sense of safety, and you don't have to have police officers shoulder to shoulder to make that possible. But you do have to have what Bill was talking about, and that's that sort of expectation of lawful behavior that manifests itself in outward signs, like not all the windows are broken in my neighborhood. And that the police officer is somebody you go to with confidence that he has your best interest at heart. I'm not saying there's no role for mental health professionals and that people shouldn't protest and demand justice in their communities. I think that's fine, and you're right to do that as an American. That's great. But I think the hypocrisy comes when you've got a guy like de Blasio who claims to be a fellow traveler with all these people who are saying defund the police, and the reality comes when it's put to the test and he actually has to make a decision, and he makes the decision the way you would expect a sane and rational person would do.
Hey, Steve, you saw the story. Did the Marine go over and then basically disarm and subdue the people doing the shooting?
Not that I know
after being
of.
shot?
That wasn't in the story. And,
I bet he did, though. I bet he did.
This was only 1 block away from where that little girl was shot and killed back in I think it was May of this year, and that didn't even happen under Dinkins in New York City. Just terrible what's happening under de Blasio. My first thought was, if I'm a New York City police officer and I've been hearing a year of this defund and denigrate, and suddenly I get an order that I get to flood the zone that's a free fire zone, my first reaction might be, yo, Mayor, why don't you just light the bat signal and see if that helps? But it occurred to me that de Blasio is the lame duck. He's term limited out. Why is he bothering? He wants some cushy job at a progressive think tank when this is all over. Why is he going to piss off his progressive buddies by making the cops into the heroes that they should be when this news came out? Why would he risk that? And I realize there's maybe something else going on. New York City Democrats are in the middle of their very complicated primary process. It's like this Rube Goldberg device where, you pull the thing back with the boot and that kicks the marble and the marble goes down the slides and that trips the thing and the flywheel spins and out finally pops a mayoral candidate for the Democrats. I can't figure out how the whole thing works. But the leader, the guy who's probably going to get the Democratic nomination, is not a progressive Democrat. His name is Eric Adams. He's a black guy. He's a former police captain, and he's running on a law and order platform. And from here, it looks like he's going to be the next mayor in New York City. And there was another story that came out Monday that progressives are really worried, starting with New York, but also in other places around the nation, that they are failing to attract what they call voters of color, and that this hurts progressive chances of winning Democratic nominations in various races, starting in New York, but all across the nation. And what I think is going on here is that de Blasio is putting the brakes on this crime spree in order to hurt Eric Adams' chances in the primary. And I don't think it's going to work, but I bet you he's putting his thumb on the scale. And there you have it. And that is your right angle on that, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. If you like stuff like this, become a member yourself. We'd love to have you on board. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.